today with the Miami Dolphins. For those who are just tuning in for the first time, we're going to cross the entire NFL and going over the 2024 season and then going over the 2025 offseason and then giving our predictions for this 2025 season. Last year, the Dolphins finished 8-9 division standings. They finished second in the AFC behind the Bills. They did not make the playoffs for the first time under Mike McDaniel. Really, what it comes down to, looking at that record, is it is kind of crazy where it felt like they had such a disastrous season by every stretch of the imagination. And this is just me being positive, obviously, because I don't actually really love the Dolphins that much, but to still be able to squeak out 8 wins and at the end of the season still be competing for a playoff spot, you kind of have to tip your hat to them a little bit. And even though it was a really rough season and the dialogue from the players and the media and everything in between, like to still win football games, you kind of have to acknowledge that that's somewhat impressive, even though it feels like everybody's kind of taking the opportunity to dance on Mike McDaniel's grave.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you don't have your starting quarterback for what, 6 of the games throughout a season. I mean, it's pretty hard to stay afloat and have a shot to make the playoffs down the stretch. So not just quarterback injuries they dealt with, but offensive line injuries they dealt with all season really makes things a lot more difficult to put together a season strong enough to make the playoffs. But and clearly that's exactly what happened here with Miami. But yeah, tip of the cap for at least being a game away is what it seems like down the stretch here for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, you would have to think that if Tua doesn't get that concussion and miss that extended period of time, they're probably a playoff team last season. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, in week 2 against Buffalo is when he had that injury and he missed the rest of that game. Obviously, Seattle, Tennessee, New England, and they lose back-to-back games following the injury to Seattle and Tennessee, where you feel like if you at least have them versus Tennessee, that you have a shot to win that game. And they lost 31-12 and didn't even have 100 yards passing or rushing from anybody. So that game was just a mess. But those 2 games also down the stretch without him versus Cleveland and New York, they did split those. But yeah, I would imagine that if you had Tua for a couple more games, that they probably would have ended up being a playoff team. And I would have lost my bet because I did bet on them to miss the playoffs. I don't root for injuries, but I'm glad they didn't make it.
My question for you is, and that would have been a big, I mean, you would have lost $20. I mean, that would have been a massive deal.
That would have sucked. That would have really sucked.
My question to you then is the media's overreaction to like who the who the Miami Dolphins are, and even my overreaction and your overreaction, like, are we too low on this football team just thinking about it? I mean, obviously there's some stuff that backs up why we would feel that way, but ultimately at the end of the day, they're still in a weaker division. I think that it's safer to say the Patriots got better. I'm still not going to trust the Jets, but they could still finish second in this division, it feels like.
Yeah, they could finish second, but it could be another, I don't think this will end up happening, but it could be another 8-9 season and they finish second. I don't think that's how that division will end up shaking out, but I feel like we're not necessarily overreacting because realistically, the way that it seems is Tua's a split second away from missing at least 5, like
his career,
a 3 to 4 game stretch every single season. Yeah,
and his career being over too as well.
Yeah, and then the guys that they had come in to play offensive line for them were just absolutely horrible. They had 2 or 3 decent run games. The second half of the season, once they had some injuries, I mean, they were really
run games
really bad.
As in output, like rushing output in a game is what you mean?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was just confused.
No, sorry. Like I'm looking here and like Achan had a game for 120 and then he had another game for 121. But like there's a stretch where the leading rusher was 63, 37, 73, 32, 19, 24, 41.
I mean, I'm not sitting here saying they had a good season by any
Oh no,
stretch.
no, I'm just
Yeah.
backing up my I'm just backing up my point. But um all of that on top of whatever's going on with Tyreek Hill and Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins organization, I think that deserves concern as well because he came out at the end of last season and was like, "I'm out of here," and then Tua kind of called him out, and now he walked that take back. Tyreek Hill did, and
So you're
now
saying
there's
bad vibes.
yeah, and now there's discussion. There was discussions floating around again about him getting like wanting out of there. So it's sort of just feels uneasy down there in Miami, if I had to put it nicely.
All right. Well, we'll get into all that. It sounds like, but yeah, I mean, so let's get into some 2024 stats. Total team DVOA, they finished 21st in the entire league. Offensive DVOA, they finished 16th, and then defensive DVOA, they finished 22nd. So they weren't even league average on offense or defense. And then when you combine those two together, they finished below average pretty much by every stretch of the imagination. It feels like if the Patriots
We lost him.
an what was I just saying?
The Patriots. Something about the
If
Patriots probably getting
it
better.
feels like if the Patriots and the Jets weren't complete dumpster fires last season, it feels like that was an opportunity for the Dolphins to probably finish a little worse than what they did. But
Well, to
that's
be
obviously not
fair,
what happened.
yeah, they swept the Patriots, but then split with the Jets last season. So something to consider when going into 2025 is those two
But
teams.
but the Patriots won 4 games last season. I'm saying if they could have
Yeah,
not in division, they were a dumpster fire like across the whole
everywhere.
league.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, in the division they might have swept them, but I mean that could have been an opportunity, like I said, like for the Patriots to take a step up. The Jets were probably that team that should have taken the step up, but obviously that didn't happen. Um, okay. So any other stats that you have for the Dolphins or no?
Yes, I have a couple other stats. Just wanted to talk about just like the close games and turnover margin. So they were -5 in the turnover margin. In field goal games, they were 1-2, and then in one score games, they were 4-4. So that's kind of expected for a team that lines up where they were as far as offensive and defensive DVOA. Um, Usually, and a team that has a negative turnover margin, it doesn't really feel like you're going to come out on top in a lot of those games that are one score if you're not at least league average and you don't really have that great of a turnover margin. Which to be fair, not having your starting quarterback for a handful of games is likely a reason why.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
But no, those are the only stats that I got for you for right now.
Just some 2024 storylines as well. We talked about it already, but injuries as a whole for this team have really seemed to be an issue. Like it feels like anytime that Tua gets out of the pocket and he gets hit, everybody's kind of like on edge, like, oh shit, like is it gonna happen?
Yeah.
And obviously Tyreek had a wrist injury last season. That was weird. And it feels like Waddle he's kind of the same way. It could
It's like a little nagging injury. Yeah, he's like a
every time
nagging injury guy.
every time he gets hit, it feels like he pops up and his back's hurt or something. It just always feels weird. Talked about some of the stuff on the offensive line. I mean, Tyron Armstead obviously retired as well. And then you look at their defensive line where they go and they get a Bradley Chubb and you go and you get a Jalen Phillips or Jalen Phillips was there already. And it feels like they've just been injured this entire stretch when it feels like those are two guys that probably should be impact guys like Jalen Phillips, who I think is probably a pretty good player, and Bradley Chubb. But now they're both healthy currently. But I mean, even Jalen Phillips, when he tore his Achilles, like it was on like kind of how everybody else tears their Achilles, like non-contact, just pushing off. To come off multiple major injuries, definitely a little bit of a red flag for me, because those seem to be like the guys who they kind of planted their flags on as like what would set this defense apart during this like regime over the last few years. And they just haven't been able to get the health side right on offense or defense.
Yeah, the Jalen Phillips especially was a guy where in 2023 he only played 8 games, had an injury, comes back in 2024, plays 4 games, has another injury. So I think at this point, like, that's not necessarily a guy that you're going to rely on long term to stay healthy and play meaningful snaps for you for the foreseeable future. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't know what the contract situation is off the top of my head for him, but when he's healthy, you're happy that he's there. But he's just a guy that's you're nervous every snap, basically. Of, oh, could it happen again? Based off of what you just said, how the Achilles non-contact, and it's just unfortunate the way that his career's played out these last 2 seasons. Because I agree, I think when he's out there, he's an impact player, but we haven't seen him at full health the last 2 seasons, and ultimately their defense has suffered because of it.
Yeah, and then same situation with the running backs too. I meant to add in. I mean, Devon Achane has a calf injury going into the year. Jalen Wright has a leg injury as well and won't be available in week 1. And now there's a real possibility Alexander Madison, who's your 4th string, is on the IR. And then now there's like a real possibility that you're rolling out Ollie Gordon as your starter week 1, and he's a rookie. And I know that people are high on him or whatever, but there's a reason why he fell so deep into the draft, and in the 6th round, like, you don't know how great he could possibly be. And that's just another side of things. It feels like, I don't know what it is. It's like Niners-esque a little bit. It's like this team just cannot stay healthy pretty much no matter what.
The Ollie Gordon situation's crazy too, because going into last year, he was a Heisman candidate at running back, and Oklahoma State just ended up being not good. So like that didn't really help, but I don't know what his stats were off the top of my head. But normally if you're a Heisman candidate going into a season, like a legitimate Heisman candidate like Ollie Gordon was, you at least get your name popping up here and there every couple weeks or so. But the season started and Ollie Gordon was nowhere to be found. So maybe it's in there somewhere. There's a resurgence he's capable of, but yeah, him falling to the 6th round probably wasn't great, especially even though it was a really running back heavy class. He was supposed to be one of the best coming out going into his final season, and it just never really panned out that way. So
he does have off the field shit too with him.
What was it? I kind of forget.
I don't want to talk out of my ass. I think it was something serious, and I think he got a DUI too.
Okay. Well, then that could make sense as to why he ended up falling. But yeah, either way, it's probably good for fantasy because whoever the running back is for the Dolphins ends up usually putting up pretty good fantasy numbers. But we saw how good Joe Mixon was in fantasy, and his on the field numbers were not nearly as good. This offensive line has some issues. There looks like there's going to be 3 new guys playing along the offensive line. Just a lot of questions offensively for the Miami Dolphins going into 2025.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his stats, and it is staggering the difference in his rushing stats. I mean, in 2023, he had 1,700 yards and 21 touchdowns, and then in 2024, he had 800 yards and 13 touchdowns. Just
Insane.
that's a massive fall off. That's almost 1,000 yards difference. So yeah, I think that like obviously something went wrong there, like as we're talking about. So yeah, again, not going to talk too much about Ollie Gordon. We talked about the Tyreek Hill stuff where he seems dissatisfied. I don't know how. I think with him, obviously, like it's hard to root for Tyreek Hill nowadays because he's kind of a bad guy. So that's just is what it is. It seems like he's a wild card at this point. He's somebody that could be arrested and off the team, it feels like, in a month because it seems like there's always some sort of interactions like and stuff going on off the field. Um the last thing is the head coach Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer have been retained. I'm not sure how long Chris Greer has been in this position, but like he hasn't even won a playoff game. I know the Dolphins haven't won the playoff game in 20 years. That means he's clearly haven't won a playoff game in his entire tenure there. Although it feels like they do a decent job of bringing talent in and everything. What has to give? We're so heavy on Mike McDaniel and this coach, and he might not be the guy because he seems a little too lax in my opinion, and I agree with that. But also at the same side of things, it's like when is it over for Chris Greer in Miami? Because it feels like he's already overstayed his welcome by many years at this point.
Yeah, so I have his NFL experience per se, Chris Greer's, and he's been the GM in Miami since 2016 and has had 3 playoff appearances and lost all 3 times. And it was all wild card appearances. So, yeah, I think they do like an okay job taking guys, but I don't know what it is on top of necessarily some of the off the field stuff, because there was the Vic Fangio situation too, where none of the players liked him, and he turned out that he's actually a decent coordinator. So maybe it's a coaching thing on top of a general manager thing, because I think occasionally they'll get some good guys in there, but it they just haven't been healthy as a unit. It really feels like, but that's also not necessarily like that great of an excuse. Like that's not a 10-year excuse, right? If you're a GM,
No.
is like you can't harp on the injury bug for 10 years. It's you've had some playoff appearances, you end up going and just playing horribly in them. Um, I think it could ultimately come down to a coaching decision as well. I think you mentioned that Mike McDaniels is just too chill of a coach, and I think I do agree with that too. I think um, it almost seems like the players can kind of do whatever they want down there in Miami, and it's like, oh well, we don't want this guy in here. We don't like how he coaches us, so we're not going to respond well to it. It's just a culture thing, is kind of what it seems like. It seems too chill down there for my liking personally, but maybe it's just a McDaniel is not ready for the head coaching life yet. Phenomenal offensive coordinator, can do a lot offensively, but being a head coach is a different animal. You're not necessarily just worried about one side of the football. You have to care about offense, defense, special teams, and it's a lot more responsibility that he might just not be ready for yet.
Yeah, I think Dolphins fans are probably itching for some new blood at the GM position and the head coaching position. I know I would be. But to get into the 2025 offseason, some roster additions that they had here, Matthew Judon. Do you have anybody else here? Nick Westbrook-Akina.
Additions. I've got
Yeah.
James Daniels, Zach Wilson,
How can I
Nick
forget?
Westbrook-Akine, Larry Borum, Artie Burns, Alexander Madison, Ashton Davis as the newcomers, and then the trade for I'm drawing a blank, the safety that they traded Jalen Ramsey for, Minka Fitzpatrick.
And don't forget Darren Waller.
Darren Waller
Some
too, yeah.
Some roster losses. They released Kendall Fuller. Do you have any other roster losses? I mean, obviously we covered the trade with
Yes.
Minka and Jalen Ramsey. Keep going.
Yep. So obviously Jalen Ramsey to the Steelers. Javon Holland signed a deal with the Giants this
Oh yeah.
offseason. Calais Campbell to the Cardinals. Robert Jones to the Cowboys. Emmanuel Ogba to the Jags. Durham Smythe to the Bears. Deshaun Hand to the Chargers. Jordan Poyer, Ciaran Neal, Braxton Berrios, Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, Kendall Lamb, Jack Stoll, Anthony Walker Jr., River Crawcraft, Tyler Huntley.
River
So
what?
River Crawcraft, I think his name is.
Dude, it's Craycraft.
Oh, well, he's another guy. He's only one of the guys that I had on here that was on and went to another team.
I mean, that's one of the best.
Sorry, I don't know River
ever. And learn ball.
Sorry, I don't know that guy.
Chat. I mean, comments. Please scream that this guy doesn't know ball.
Yeah, well, I don't watch any games.
So into the 2025 draft, I really like the Kenneth Grant pick, D tackle in Michigan.
Yeah,
from Michigan. I think he's going to be a really good player. My personal opinion would have been to figure out something to do on this offensive line. There were a lot of good players that went after him. Still, I feel like when the Saints took Kevin Banks from Texas, I felt like that was when they kind of zagged. I felt like that could have potentially been their guy, but just based off of the Tua injury bug and kind of what is the trends that have been happening with their O linemen, and they were getting older, they were hurt. I think that it probably should have been top of priority to take a tackle, and they didn't take one tackle in this entire draft. They take Jonah Sayavinia, a guard from Arizona, Jordan Phillips, a nose tackle from Maryland, Jason Marshall Jr., a corner, and Dante Trader Jr., a safety, Ollie Gordon, the second in the 6th, and then Quinn Ewers in the 7th with Zeke Biggers, a D end from Georgia Tech. So I don't love. Sorry. I was a little thrown off by that. I had to read that last name maybe once or twice over before I said it. So to go in, so what do you think of what they did in this draft? Do you follow what I say here of like this team could have potentially used a little bit more? Like, I get it. Jonah Sayavinia, I don't know how to say his last name. Sorry, is a starter for them. Do you think that it would have killed them to take another potential starter in the first round for this offensive line, which we both feel is pretty much dismantled?
No, I don't think that would have hurt them at all. Even if Tua is not your long-term plan at quarterback and you want to move on from him eventually, you can never go wrong with having a generational left tackle. No. So I feel like they did address the offensive line with the guard they took in the second round, and then they had to supplement it throughout free agency, the rest of these guys. But I think that the Kelvin Banks move is going to hurt them long term, because I think he's going to be really good for the Saints. And that was a guy that I would have liked to see them take there in the first round. Even though I like Kenneth Grant, I think he's going to be good defensively for these guys, but that's not necessarily what I think their biggest need is at this point. I think it's offensive line and then secondary. They lost a bunch of guys. They have to replace a bunch of players. They traded away Jalen Ramsey. Obviously, they got Minka back, but they have a lot of new guys across this defense. And you have a couple guys on the defensive line already. Chop Robinson had a really good year when he came in and played. And then you do have Jalen Phillips back, like we mentioned earlier. I would assume it'll take a little bit for him to get back to 100%, as normally it does when you are coming off an injury. But he's still there. He's still healthy now. I think you could have spent resources elsewhere with your first round pick.
Yeah, I'm looking even at some of the offensive linemen that were taken after they took Kenneth Grant. Gray Zabel was taken at 18th. Donovan Jackson was taken at 24th. Josh Connerly Jr. was taken at 29th, and then Josh Simmons was taken at 32nd overall. And you've heard really good things about them. So it just feels like they could have gotten two, even if it wasn't a tackle, they could have potentially gotten two starting guards for them. So just something to keep in mind. Like I didn't love that they did that, but I mean, that's the direction they ended up taking. And he is going to be a good player. It's not that's not really the argument that I'm making there. So, but it is what it is.
The Quinn Ewers in the 7th round. What a fall from glory Quinn Ewers had as a college player into the NFL. I mean, it's a similar story to Ollie Gordon. Like Quinn Ewers was one of the best players coming out of high school, transferred into Texas, had a decent year, like a pretty good year, but I don't think anybody thought he was necessarily going to fall that late in the draft, but I don't even know if he's going to make the team.
I don't know. I think he's going to make the team just because it looks like they're only housing 3 quarterbacks. But yeah, I don't know. I never thought that he was going to be like a impact guy in the league. But I mean,
no.
So
but still, it's crazy hearing some of these guys. Like he was a big name guy, and that's the only reason why I'm saying it's crazy that he's in the 7th round. Because normally when you hear those big name guys, you think they're off the board a little earlier, but 7th round. Who would have thought?
Let's go into the Vegas betting lines for the season. The win total right now is set at 7.5. The Super Bowl odds are plus 8,000 to win the AFC East is plus 700. Playoff odds to make the playoffs are plus 225. I think this is a good value. I really do. I know that we just sat here and kind of shit on the Dolphins a little bit, but they're one game away from making the playoffs last season. It seems like everyone's off of the play of the Dolphins like big time this season. What's holding them back from like just being able to win one more game next season or win 2 more games next season if their quarterback can actually stay healthy for a full year? I know that's the big if
Yeah, that's
healthy. But
yeah.
do you think, my question to you before you say anything is, do you think that if Tua were to play all 17 games, which he did in 2023, do you think that that would make this team a borderline wild card team? Or do you think that no matter what, this team is missing the playoffs?
I think I worry less about them offensively if I'm just banking it on like, okay, say that Tua plays all these games. I think offensively they can get it done because when he is healthy, their offense is pretty good. But I'm looking around at the defense and they have a lot of new names over there that I'm really unsure of. So I think that could certainly be an issue for this season for them. Um, that and the health concerns are enough to make me say that I don't think they will be a playoff team. Um, I think they could very well end up splitting with the Jets again. I think they'll at least lose a game to New England this year, solely based off of New England finally having a competent head coach in the building. But I don't know. If you feel good about the Dolphins and you are willing to take a bet on them staying healthy, I think that plus 225 to make the playoffs, is that what you said it was?
Yeah.
I think that that's absolutely worth it. I personally do not feel comfortable enough banking on them to be a playoff team this season. And if they do, they're probably a first round exit again. I think if they don't make the playoffs, then there will be more and more people certainly calling for the job of Mike McDaniels. And
Well, it's not even calling. I mean, they'll just get fired.
What was
Chris Greer.
the G? Chris Greer. Yeah, I think those two guys might have seen their final days if they don't make the playoffs this season.
They are, yeah. If they don't make the playoffs, they're getting fired. I mean, that's really all there is to it.
Yeah.
It's not anything else. So, yeah, I think that there's like a little bit of both, like on each side. It looks like that the Bengals are closing in on an agreement with NFL sack leader. Like, I just don't
Trey
understand.
Hendrickson.
The Bengals are stupid. We'll keep going. It just feels like I said, like if this team was as bad as they were last year, and all the things that went wrong, and they could still win the amount of games that they did, why not? Why can't that be a possibility? I lean with you a little bit, but I feel like at this point everybody's so off of the Miami Dolphins, and everybody is so like they're to miss the playoffs is minus 275. Like people are pretty much like planting their flag on the fact that this is going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. I also thought that going into this, but at the same time, it's like, well, if everybody's kind of going one way, maybe I'll like go the other. But again, that's might not be how I feel fully, but it's just something. I think that it's a real possibility that this team could be a borderline playoff team.
If all things go to shit like they did for a stretch last season, this team could win 5 games, 4 games.
Yeah, probably.
Just looking at their schedule.
So, yeah, let's go into the 2025 season prediction. Go ahead. You said go ahead and what you were about to say about the schedule.
So I'm just looking through it right now, and they go at Indianapolis, home versus the Patriots, at Buffalo, home versus the Jets, away versus the Panthers, home versus the Chargers, away versus the Browns, away versus Atlanta, home versus Baltimore, home versus Buffalo, home versus Washington, and then they have a bye. So the Week 12 bye, I love personally, to sort of figure out, okay, what are we looking like before we try to make a playoff push here? But I think the Colts probably got worse. I think the Patriots got better. I think the Buffalo Bills are still the Buffalo Bills. The Jets, probably a toss up. I think Carolina got better. I think the Chargers got better. The Browns did not. Don't know yet on the Falcons, but probably the same. Baltimore, Buffalo, Washington got better today. Now that they signed Terry McLaurin, and then the Saints are still the Saints. The Jets. So I look at it this way: a lot of the teams that they're playing this year, I think, got better than last year. So that I don't think that bodes well for them. And realistically, I think this team ends up winning 6 games. I think they go 6-11, and that's if they're healthy. I just think that there's too many questions defensively for this team, and I'm not willing to bank on the health of this team moving forward.
Yeah, I'm almost like getting talked into like taking them to like make the playoffs almost. I think that like I don't have this is a team that I'm just gonna kind of say like they're gonna win 8 games again, and that's what it is. I think that they do have like a really good shot of making the playoffs. Just because everyone's so out on them and the whole nine, it's just like, well, can they round into form? What I think needs to happen personally is they need to bottom out. This team just doesn't have any cap space. This team has shot themselves in the foot time and time again. I think back to the season when they lost a first round pick because of the Tom Brady situation and their owner. And this is a team that needs a new head coach, like a new voice in the building, a new perspective. They need a new GM, somebody to take over this roster and try to kind of rip it down to its studs, which is very much needed to do, and then try to build it back up. Really, you look at the turning point of what happened with this team, and it's just like they won 10 games, they won 9 games with Brian Flores. The Brian Flores stuff happened where he was aggressive. They fire him. Then they bring in Mike McDaniel, and the first thing that they do is like, "Oh, we got Mike McDaniel. He's an offensive guy. Let's give up the house for Tyreek Hill. Give up the house for Tyreek Hill," which I still think was a questionable move at that point. I don't think that was something that, I mean, revisionist history at this point. That was a bad move. Like
Yeah, for
as
sure.
cool as like a name of Tyreek Hill is, and when you watch him from time to time, like for sure. But looking back on it, Tyreek Hill has not impacted this team to go and win like a Super Bowl or anything like that. Or if you ask Brady Green, I mean, if you have Tyreek Hill as your wide receiver, him or Cortland Sutton as a wide receiver one, you can make the wild card of the playoffs. But again, like
By the Bills in
yeah,
Buffalo.
yeah, I just don't think that that was probably the right move that they needed to make at that time. I felt like that they still had a lot of work to do on the roster, and it felt like they were like, "Oh, we get Tyreek Hill, like now we're a contender," and that's just
Yeah,
never been the case for them.
they jumped the gun on that decision.
So I think that that's probably what needs to happen next. Is let's have a down year, and Tua may or may not be the guy. I don't know about that yet. I don't think he's terrible, but I don't think he's great as well. But again, like I just think that if you were to be able to build this roster up from the trenches and play a different brand of football, then we're sitting here having a different conversation about Tua, because he clearly can operate an offense at a high level. He's proven that.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, is he somebody that you can rely upon, like to just be like that guy to like completely take over? Or we talk about this all the time. Like, who are the best teams? Look at the best teams across the NFL. What's one thing that we can identify about all those teams? They have a really, really great defense. So, and this defense just isn't even league average. So why should we, even if the offense is the best offense in the entire NFL, which I don't think it can be, this defense is so bad.
Yeah, they're set up like similarly to the Cincinnati Bengals right now as far as that goes, where a lot of money is invested in only a few, like a lot of money is invested at wide receiver, a lot of money was invested at quarterback. Um, and they're really trying to take a lot of chances on defense. Hopefully their free agency moves are paying off, and hopefully that the rookies or that they take are able to come in and make an impact right away. And that just makes it really difficult to have a number one defense. Like, you have to have some cornerstones going into a season, and that isn't something that happens all at one time. Um, I think they have some decent, like they have a couple good players. Like we said, I like the Kenneth Grant move. I think that Chop Robinson was really good. And I think Jalen Phillips is good when he plays. It's just like there's so many holes everywhere else on this defense. And then Minka Fitzpatrick, obviously, he's great, but is he past his prime too? Probably. Um,
Mm, I don't agree with
or
that.
or
That's
or
I
on
don't
the
agree
way
with that
out, maybe.
statement. No, I don't agree with that. I think he's still a good
Okay,
player.
fair.
I don't
Then
think
you've got
adding.
like
I don't think adding though, like I'm saying like there needs to be some sort of cohesion of the unit as a whole, from like a scheme perspective, a defensive coordinator perspective. I don't think just slapping Minka Fitzpatrick on a defense is like, all right, we're in a good spot now. Like
well,
there's
no,
just
no,
so much
I
that
get
needs to happen.
I agree with you. All I'm saying is like you have like three or four guys that you feel good about defensively, and that doesn't even make up half your defense. So like that's probably not a spot that you necessarily want to be in as a coaching staff, where it's like, well, shit, we have seven holes that we need to fill, and we aren't really sure what exactly we're going to get out of these seven guys. Are the odds of all seven of them being great hitting? No, probably not. Very high. Will you probably get two or three? Yeah, which that's great. That's something to build on. But ultimately, that's something that also that's my whole point was it takes a little while sometimes to put together a cohesive unit. It takes a little while to build a defense. Like it isn't necessarily something you can just go do over an off season.
Yeah, I'm right with you. That's why I said it's time to. I think what's best for this team is to potentially have a losing season and then to strip this down to the studs and figure it out from there. And I think the first thing, my preseason prediction from last year, before even all that stuff came out with Tyreek Hill, was I thought Tyreek Hill was going to get traded from the Miami Dolphins. That hasn't happened. Obviously, they're still keeping them at this point, and I think that's more of like that's the problem with the ownership. Like, you have to be willing to make those types of moves. You have to be willing to cut ties when it's time to cut ties, and I feel like he's overstayed his welcome fully. So, yeah, that's my prediction for them is probably like 7-8 games, but I think what's best is for them to potentially bottom out.
Yeah, I agree. The Tyreek Hill situation is definitely overstayed his welcome, and like a team with so many other issues that you need to address, paying a 30-year-old wide receiver however many $1 million is probably shouldn't be that high up on your list after he already said he wants to leave and then had to walk it back, and now there's additional rumors going around. That's not necessarily like a business that I would want to be in.
Bad vibes, the bad vibes Dolphins.
Yeah. Yeah, the bad vibes Dolphins.
I just spit it.